Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Physiology of respiration. I'm Dr. Kachiwal, Professor and Chairman of the Department of Physiology and Biochemistry in the Agriculture Institute, Tandojam. The respiratory system provides the extensive gas exchange surface area between air and circulating blood, filters, warms, and humidifies air, moves air to and from exchange surface of the lungs, protects respiratory surface from outside environment. It provides the capability to speech, and it has to regulate the acids in pH regulation. Mostly the cells requires oxygen for cellular metabolism, maintenance, growth, defense, and division. So carbon dioxide is a byproduct of a cellular metabolism. Carbon dioxide plus plasma that makes a carbonic acid and even produces the hydrogen ions and bicarbonate ions. The tissue releases the hydrogen ions as well, and cells needs to remove the carbon dioxide and take in the oxygen. So the respiratory system and the circulatory system works together to deliver the oxygen to the cells to produce energy. The major physiological process in all living organisms involve the production of energy, typically with intake of oxygen and the release of carbon dioxide, performed by a special respiratory modes, which differs from species to species. The type of a gas exchange surface may differ in the individual species. The insects may have external gills or the internal gills. The mammalians having a lungs, whereas the insects having a trachea. There are various modes of respiration in a simple unicellular animal like amoeba. Respiration takes place by a simple diffusion of gases through a cell membrane. Most of the animals have, however, specific organs for respiration. The animal like earthworms, which live in the soil, use their skin to absorb oxygen from air and remove carbon dioxide. So the respiratory organ in the earthworm is the skin. The aquatic animals like fish, prawn, or mussels have a gills as the respiratory organs, which extract the oxygen dissolved in water and take away carbon dioxide from the body. In insects like grasshopper, cockroach, housefly, and mosquito, the tiny holes called aspiracles on their body and the air tubes called trachea are the respiratory organs. The respiratory organs of a land animals such as men, birds, lizard, dogs, and a frog having lungs. However, the frog breathes both by lungs and as well as by skin. So there are the types of breathing. Mainly, there are 4 types of respiration. One is the breathing or inhalation, is the movement of the air through the conducting the passage between the atmosphere, the lungs. The air move through the passages because of a pressure. There's a gradients that are produced by contraction of the diaphragm and the thoracic muscles. Then the cellular respiration, the process in which the nutrients are covered into a useful energy, converted into a useful energy in a cell. internal respiration, which is the exchange of gases between the blood and tissue fluids. External respiration, which is the exchange of gases, oxygen and carbon dioxide between inhaled air and blood. So the types of respiration, if you see that the breathing versus a cellular respiration, it takes place from the inhalation of oxygen or exhalation of the carbon oxide into the lungs and travels through the blood, the oxygen and the carbon dioxide, and goes into the tissues or cells or in the mitochondria where they are being converted the energy. The external respiration is between the environment and the lungs, whereas the internal respiration is between the blood and the tissues. Mostly the respiration in the ruminants and mammals, pulmonary ventilation occurs via inhalation. When air enters the body through the nasal cavity, from the nasal cavity, air passes through the pharynx and larynx to the trachea. Gas exchange in the lungs occurs in the millions of small air sacs called alveoli in the mammals. Whereas the respiration in the equines, the horse's respiratory tract divided in the upper respiratory tract and a lower respiratory tract. This is what makes the horse an obligate nasal breather, meaning that the horses cannot breathe through the mouth. The air is then passed to the larynx. Respiratory system in the birds. The bird's respiratory system consists of paired lungs, which contains static structures with the surfaces for a gas exchange, and connected air sacs, which expand and contract, causing air to move through the static lungs. So the uh, paired spiracles are present, the posterior, abdominal, the cervical, and the sacs at the lungs. So when a bird inhales air, actually leaves its lungs, fresh air enters the lungs as it exhales. The first or a constant stream of air enters through the back of the mouth and goes into the larynx and trachea. It is channeled in a pair of tubes straight through the lungs and to the system of air sacs and hollow bones. So if you see that the birds can fly because of the hollow bones, which carries the air into the bone, and the uh, enterocervical sac, the trachea, the cervical sacs, lungs, the abdominal sac, anterior thoracic sac, and posterior thoracic sac. So in the bird, like a hen having a trachea, cervical air sac, the clavicular air sac, the cranial air, thoracic air sac, the lungs, and the cardiac thoracic air sacs, and abdominal air sac. The respiratory system in a fish, the fish having a gills adapted a structure for extraction of the oxygen from water, and oxygen diffuses from water into the blood. So the gills are made of thousands of filaments and are responsible for gas exchange respiration. The respiration in amphibians, the amphibians have the simple lungs lying in the dorsal peritoneal cavity. The skin is main pathway for a gas transfer in the aquatic species. So that as the carbon dioxide and the oxygen is being exchanged through a skin or through a lungs and having a normal mouth and the nostrils. When the frog lives on the land, then it takes the oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange through the lungs. When it goes into the mud or into the water, then the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide takes place through a skin. So at that time, the skin works like the organ of the respiration. In a human being, the pulmonary ventilation, the lungs, the air is taken through a nostrils or from a mouth into the uh, larynx, trachea, then the tracheoles, bronchi, then the bronchioles and alveoli. And from the alveoli, the blood carries the oxygen and then it travels through a blood into the cells and goes into the mitochondria where the oxygen is metabolized and the carbon dioxide is produced, which is being exhaled through the blood and comes into the lungs, and then it is being ex expelled out. So the pulmonary ventilation, then the pulmonary gas exchange, and then the external ventilation. It goes into the alveoli from which the from the lungs. It goes to the heart. The uh, heart having two chambers from a right side and two chambers in the left side. So the blood from the body goes into the left side and it travels from the atria into the ventricle and goes into the lungs by a pulmonary vein, and then it travels through a pulmonary artery into the right atria, and then it travels to the left uh, right ventricle and then go to the oxygenated blood into the body. When it travels through arteries, inferior vena cava and superior vena cava, it should have, and the aorta, it goes to the capillaries and then it reaches to the cells where it is metabolized and the carbon dioxide in this exchange is being produced, which is being exhaled and carried out by the veins to the left side of the heart, and then it travels to the lungs. So it is a circulatory system by which the oxygen is oxygenated and then deoxygenated. And this supplies the oxygen from the lungs to the heart and the respiratory system and cardiovascular system uh, combinedly works together and uh, perform the exchange of gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide. Thank you very much. Uh, it may be this lecture already been given to you in the class and the demonstration has been done. Therefore, this is only an online provision for you people to listen this one and then share with the friends and subscribe the channel. And